All right, guys, MicroCapGemShow. You guys have sort of emerged as what we call the voice of the ICM trenches. I think
Wow.
that's sort of a fair thing. I think you guys
Yeah, I have
have
no idea. It just
positioned
said
yourself at the center of the sort of
reconnecting.
energy,
Okay,
taken the long when everybody was taking the short. And I yelled at you a little bit, Dinero, there on the internet a bit because I take exception to some of the absurd bullishness that you guys were out there with. But
what were you yelling about? I missed that.
well, I was just at the, okay. I wasn't yelling. We had a good exchange, but it was
I'll put it like this: you were actually spot on with your take. Like you had a good take. Give some context here. Umbra had just raised 150 mil or committed 150 mil to the raise. Internet's going crazy,
right.
and I put out a tweet. Just on my Sunday, it's pumping again after the shakeout, and I'm like, this was such an obvious trade. They got $150 million worth of attention waiting sideline to get into it. And Jess was like, nah, dude, it was a Wales game. Like, that's not actually what happened. And I'm like, you know what? This is fair, but quick little Sunday tweet.
Well, and I'd seen, it was like the 15th take I'd seen like that. And I was just like, give me a fucking break.
Yeah, but it's speculation dom and came up with a great take, and it caused a good discourse on the internet.
Yeah, and here we are.
Yeah.
Okay, so
you guys have been getting into ICM quite a bit here. This is it's nice to see. It's kind of transcending across the broadder economy here.
I mean, the funny thing is, it's always been our thing. It's just we have a new name for it, or a new way to like shove it into the cultural zeitgeist.
Well, and that's kind of where I want to start here, because I think this big question that's been on my mind, it's going to comes up, I think, through various venues around, should you just be buying? Are we investing in tokens or are we trading tokens? And so I guess the place I would love to start is, I'm curious how you guys are defining ICM and the opportunity that exists there.
I guess I'll start by doing just a real simple definition. I think it's bringing typically illiquid or difficult to access markets on chain and making them tradable and accessible to everyone. I think, simply put.
And I'll also say bringing revenue generating real world businesses on chain, or real world startups on chain, right? Like not just basement anon devs, that are just building some fake utility for the sake of it, but actual real founders with a background in Web 2, and instead of just using the technology available to them in a much better way.
Yeah, and to round out the vibe that we've captured with MCG, I think the three of us, as we started to stream in April when the market was max terrified, max like ETH is at $1,500, and people are wondering, my meme bags have gone to zero or really faltering here. Like, what's the next narrative? And so we kind of built the show around this idea that there's something else out there other than memes on Solana that's interesting to trade. And no one was talking about these projects at the time. Like, Belief had just launched, and obviously Belief captured the imagination of the internet, and these AI projects and projects like Viva, which is a multi-billion-dollar telecom company, was launching through Belief, but no one on the timeline was really discussing it outside of kind of that core LaunchCoin community. And so what we wanted to do was bring those projects on stream because we felt it was different, it was new, it felt fresh, it felt energizing. And that's really kind of the genesis of where we started to see success and our audience start to grow, because there was other like-minded people that said, hey, I came from Ethereum, I did the DeFi thing in 2021, I did the NFT thing, I did the meme thing, but now I want to see the laws change in the US. I want to see real companies come on chain, experiment with token systems. I know ICM is maybe nothing new, but I think the vibe and attitude towards companies experimenting with tokens, that is the new thing. And we were able to kind of capture that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're seeing an increase in desire to launch tokens, which I think comes from a regulatory shift or perceived regulatory shift. I think TBD where that lands, but like that is clearly the Gensler dampening factor is off. And then an increased desire for teams to launch tokens because there's more buyers for it there. And so, C Club launched back when social tokens were a thing, which I think now we call them meme coins. And we launched as DAOs because they were the sort of structure that kind of allowed people to put a valuation framework around them and learn the challenges of that quickly. But so I think like this idea of permissive retail participation, this idea of a new type of investor that's emerging, and I think we've always sort of taken the over on thinking that that user investor is not just dumb money, right? These are folks that can have an incredible impact on the success of founders and of projects and of moving narratives. And I think this term, internet capital markets, does a great job of capturing that. I also think that the way that you guys talk about internet capital markets feels like it is a niche of actually the broader internet capital markets narrative. I think, and so we've sort of talked about how it fits like the left and the right curve in a beautiful way, where you can have Samani out here talking about how it's this big category, and one part of that might be new retail or slash startups coming on chain, but there's much more. And then I think from like the Believe and maybe Metaplex and maybe MetaDAO fits in there. There's sort of this new type of dynamic that's emerging where tokens maybe look like equity, but in many cases maybe they don't as well. Because I would say that whoever was saying that there's sort of new startup equity coming on that mean a lot more. To be quite honest, that's not what I see happening in most of the ICM tokens right now, right? Like these are tokens that aren't representing ownership in some way. They don't get exposure to equity like Dynamics as of yet, though I think clearly there's some teams that are running at that. And it is actually a meme coin, and I'm not saying that with shade. I think meme coins have incredible value, but there is this open question of whether there's like long-term value around these types of tokens that have been launched on Believe. We've had Bobby from DuPont who's explained his sort of point of view on stuff here as well, but to me, the question ultimately is, are we investing venture style where we think that we can hold these things for a long period of time? There's going to be exceptional value created here. Or are we just playing a short-term rotation game, which I think is where the market is today? And it seems like where your head is at, but push back.
Well, I want to, before Dom gets into this, because I want to share a turning point in our show moment was when we had Vibhu on from the Solana Foundation. And the Friday before, he was on the Believe Spaces and basically didn't seem to kind of really jive with how Believe viewed ICM and how the kind of the trenches viewed ICM. His viewpoint was very much, traditional capital markets coming on chain and Solana being the venue for that. And so he didn't really understand how we were doing the fair launch model, as that was kind of like the way these tokens were trading. And rightfully so, he pushed back. And so we, over the weekend went on an exchange. He said, sure, I'll come on Monday and let's discuss it. And so that's when we had our first kind of tokenized equity conversation at the level of he is at Solana Foundation, and he just gave his personal viewpoint on that, and that's kind of where the discussion really started around tokenized equity, around Believe. And Dom, do you want to kind of pick it up there?
Sure. I think firstly, Jess, you're right. Like right now we're in those early stages where you could call these memes, but I think the inspiring part is we're headed in the right direction. You're seeing regulatory clarity from the SEC right there. I think they're literally talking about it today. They have a meeting regarding crypto. You're seeing Robinhood lean into this tokenized equities and private companies narrative. I think the conversation is headed in the right direction. So no, I don't think we're in the final form, which is why we're so launchpad agnostic, right? We have MetaDAO coming on, literally right after this. We talk to Soar, we see what Maya's doing from Street, we talk about Believe. And so, there's all sorts of different shapes and forms these are going to come in. And the answer is no one really knows what that's going to look like. And so you're right, we're in a very niche category, and we're kind of still experimenting. There's a lot of gray area and nuance.
Well, my fear here is that I think I tweeted the other day that I think ICM in its current form is like NFTs of this cycle. Like it is people chasing B early games for the most part, chasing flipping, trading, etc. I think that it is I'm fully agreeing. Like I think we're moving in very quickly in the right direction, and I think we hold sort of the same belief around both the importance and the impact that actually expanding access to capital and the ability to participate in innovation and startup investing. I think that's huge. My worry is in the short term that we misalign incentives and expectations. And if you're taking a trading perspective, we're looking for narrative, and we're looking for the idea that there's going to be a higher price in some short term in the future. I think we're taking a venture perspective. It's difficult for me to really wrap my head around why I would want to go balls deep into pretty much any of these tokens that have launched recently, because they feel like they are capped at a certain level, or they're maybe not super novel in a certain level. Or, I think, Avicii launched on MetaDAO, and I've seen that pitch from 10 teams before, and it doesn't feel like they can go win that category. Now, I don't know that team. Maybe they're great, so I don't want to throw shade at them whatsoever. But from an investment perspective, where I'm trying to go and invest in category defining projects, if we're focused on good narratives in the short term, are we kind of kneecapping the opportunity?
Well, if I can say this, you're right. Like it's way too early to kind of see any clear definition around what this will be, what the final form is. But I think what we're looking at is the market. It will do whatever it will do. The trenches will trade anything, and we've seen that over these last several years on Solana. So if there's anything like to speculate on, they will do that. However, like you said, we're moving in a very quickly in the right direction. We spoke to Maya from Street, and they're actually in meetings with A16Z. A16Z is kind of interested in what this model is that they're working on. So we're starting to see, even beyond our little small echo bubble here in CT, we're starting to see some interest from outside of this industry. And so I think that's encouraging. In the meantime, while this is all figured out, the trenches will trade and they'll speculate and they'll do what they do. But I think the exciting part, going back to what Dom was mentioning earlier, is again, the class of founders that we have, the class of teams that we have now that are launching, even if they can still be considered meme coins, right? But there wasn't $1 billion company in Viva launching before. There wasn't like a neobank with thousands and thousands of signups and millions of dollars in spend, launching before. I'm also pretty jaded.
They are launching before. Like these are teams that are just they're launching tokens, or they're launching networks, or they're running a go-to-market, building out their products and coming to market on Binance and going down only, or they're going on Aerodrome. Like it's happening in other places. And so I'm wondering how much of the it's interesting to me that they're sort of segmented out in a certain way here, because certain are launching. Like, is it because of the token model they're launching? Is it because they're targeting a different category of a buyer here?
Well, I would give some pushback. I would say like it's under a different context. Like if we take a history dive here and we go back, take it back to Ethereum, you would have anonymous devs that don't even have locked liquidity and they would just rug. And so we've kind of made this natural progression. So it's like, yeah, we don't have necessarily equity anchored tokens yet. We don't necessarily have clear vision on where it's coming, but we're coming from somewhere where it's like anonymous devs, unlocked liquidity, no guarantees, right? At least with MetaDAO, there are those token holder benefits where they kind of can decide. And if things go wrong, like we've seen on MetaDAO, they've had to liquidate before, and the token holders actually get their money back. It's like, in what world have we seen that in crypto before?
For sure. Yeah.
I think it's also just productive. Like, we're in these uncertain gray area, messy stages of this tech and token models. And, you're never going to attract the best founder who has access to infinite private capital until those models are figured out. But you need all these examples. Like you need a bunch of launches on MetaDAO to figure out when future key works and when it fails and what's good to vote on and what's not, and so I think this is just a very necessary state for us to be in to get to eventually the thing that really works.
I'll chime in with, we have Bobby, who made a mistake. He tweeted at Believe, and all of a sudden he had
it's incredible. Yeah,
right?
It's incredible.
Like, some of these launches, Kled at the beginning was a bit of a crazy situation, but Avi, he pipes onto our live stream and yells out equity anchored tokens, right? Like, these are founders that I think are being attracted to crypto today that weren't 8 months, 8 months ago before the election, et cetera, just because it was illegal to operate a crypto business kind of in the US, frankly speaking. So yeah, I mean, part of it was a mistake. Yeah, Bobby made a mistake. And then that set the narrative, right? When a company like Duke, which people know and does $100 million GMV through their platform, all of a sudden launches a token, people take notice.
I'm curious how you guys are thinking about the different forms this is taking today. Like we have, you mentioned Street and Soar going after kind of the tokens as like equity wrappers. We have MetaDAO going the future key path. And then you have things like Zora who are going the like token deeply integrated into the, success and economics of a product. Like how do you make sense of those? And do you think they consolidate somewhere, or we're kind of just getting into this world where ICM is going to take many different forms?
If I can take that, I know Dom has a really, really good take on this one. But one thing I'll say is, when founders come to this industry, they all have different needs. And some platforms can kind of cater to those needs better than others. but we haven't found that one model that works. And that's what crypto is, right? This is kind of the bleeding edge, the cutting edge of innovation. We're here to, a lot of people come here to experiment, and we're seeing those experiments take shape now. I think MetaDAO has a more crypto native solution in terms of like prioritizing token holders. You have those like Street and Soar that are kind of merging equity and tokens, and kind of there's a lot of work to do on the regulatory side. And then you have tokens like Believe, kind of, pioneering that bonding curve and that fair launch model. But I just think there's not a one size fits all right now. But Dom, I want to hear your take on this, because I know you got something good for this one.
I think you're spot on. It's not a one size fits all. We'll take Hyperliquid as an example. We see, Believe and many other people are trying to replicate this sort of fully on-chain, verifiable, just revenue flywheel. And so, like, I think if you're an on-chain crypto app that already has, maybe has been pre-existing for a while, and you're making, millions of dollars, like, sure, like that's maybe your model where you just do full buybacks, on-chain revenue just goes back into it. And that's a very like fringe case, right? Not everyone can do that. And I don't think every startup should be dedicating money to flywheel. It's just like, it's ridiculous. That's not how you build a business. So there is a balance. Maybe if you're just an idea, you can launch that idea on Believe, maybe, and get some capital to fulfill that, right? Or if you have a company that's maybe pre-revenue, maybe you launch with Soar or Street, and you tie some equity to it. You sell 10% of your equity, right? Or maybe like MetaDAO, which is beautiful. It's like, if you're willing to give a lot of rights to token holders, which not every founder wants to do, you go that route. So I would say it's kind of the latter of your question there. I think there's so much experimentation going on. You can't really put an individual one project with any specific launch pad.
Yeah, that's what I'm the most excited about. This is you just start to see these ecosystems where smart people are trying to find the edge by remixing, innovating, I guess, in the models. And I think also there's sort of this general belief that so many people have that crypto is immutable in some way, and that you come out with one model and you can't shift it. And now obviously we've seen a lot of missteps in people trying to shift things. I think Believe is the top of mind for me here, as far as like maybe communication and credibility around it. But I think we'll ultimately do okay. And so there is, if you have the social capital as a founder, and you have like the right intentions, and you're not out here fucking people over, there's a lot of ways that you can kind of iterate on this. And I think there's a ton of value in being an early mover in these various ecosystems. The other piece that I would love for you guys to help me contextualize is, I think we think about, maybe a lot of this is around sort of capital formation. So, how are we getting capital in to go build something or to sustain the development of something? But there's this other angle here, which is fees on volume. And so maybe it's more of like a revenue angle to look at things through. And obviously that's, I think, what MetaDAO is doing for their revenue. But, I think Cled is a prime example of the amount of money that can be generated when there's a token that is very, hot, volatile, and you capture some fees from it. So I'm curious how we contextualize those two sides of capital formation, and then this new opportunity of, is it revenue? Is that the right way to describe it?
Do either of you guys have a hot take on that?
I do actually have a hot take on this. So I've written some private checks, and I kind of look at this kind of like let me put out an idea out there. I'm a crack dev. Here's my idea. Here's a token. Let's see if it resonates with anyone. I start generating some fees, and now I can, go buy compute, go hire, go build up a small team, get the idea a little more fleshed out. This then can lead into venture capital, which then can lead into kind of the business snowballing into something real. So I kind of look at this as like, pre private investing as an interesting idea to test ideas. Now, where that meets the equity part of it is still to be determined, but we are kind of seeing, Cled move in that direction. But chill.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, and I heard this from a very smart person. I forget the name, some billionaire. He said, when you lack capital, you have to replace that lack of capital with what's the word, Josh? What's the word I'm missing? I just had it in my head. I'm like, man, this is gonna be a great line for the
class.
Yeah. When you lack capital, you have to replace that with like experimentation is not the right word. But you have to try to, bridge that gap. And so like there are people that truly lack capital, and they have these ideas for startups, and they need a way to generate revenue. I think the trading fees is cool. I haven't decided if I think that's sustainable yet. I think it's nice to have for a market that's generally untradeable or illiquid. Like, sure, slap trading fees on there, and you might as well profit from it to go back towards a business. But I don't know. Maybe I'm missing your question.
But lacking capital and also lacking access, because there are great products and founders out there that needed a spark but couldn't get into the conversation to raise venture.
Yeah, I do think I see you guys have kind of, joined the ICM run movement. And that's an interesting point, Josh, that you make. These same devs that are making startups and kind of don't have too much direction, I think could greatly benefit from incubators and accelerators, because you're right, they need that resourcing, not just from a capital perspective. So that's a whole different conversation, and we're kind of going off.
I think the challenge I see with launching tokens early is I think it's actually more challenging to go raise other capital after the fact outside of like a true bull case, right? Which I think you should just assume that your token's going to be hot for a while, and then it's going to be not for a while, and your job is to go figure out how to go get through that so it's hot again. And you kind of want to have enough capital to be able to get through that not hot position. And I think we've seen it in our portfolio, we've seen it in other places where having a liquid token was very useful for a short period of time and then completely deadly to future fundraising, because
we're seeing this in real time. Like Orgo right now has went from launching an idea or Ben convincing his friend basically to go launch something to now he's like raising venture, and he might raise probably a few $1 million. I actually think he'll raise more because he launched a token at first.
Okay.
Got the thing started, got the product started, got 1,000 developers behind this thing, got attention. If he didn't do that token and he came out of the gate and said, "Oh, I have this cool technology and give me $3 million," I don't think any VC would have gave him $3 million. So that he doesn't explicitly talk about the token in terms of like ownership to anything. He just says, "Look, this is something I'm building. It's interesting. People now are fans of mine, and I'll figure it out down the road." And
can I jump in on that? I think because Jess, you were making the opposite point, right? I do think it's a double-edged sword. Yeah. Like if you go ahead and you launch a token and token just does terrible, you have community that hates you, like you're kind of screwed. You're pigeonholed in that sense. Whereas if you launch a token and you kind of get that head, you go from 0 to 1, right? We understand 0 to 1 is the hardest part in startups, and you launch a token, you get that initial community and audience. People actually, you get product market fit in some sense. Like it can be a benefactor. So it's truly a double-edged sword.
That's the funny thing, right? Is that there's this long history of crypto projects mistaking product market fit for speculative fit.
This is a good point.
And so, and that is, I mean, if you talk to the guys that have been around who've maybe been on either end of that, that is one of like the big lessons that pop out, which is like, okay, now we have this sort of, we're building two products, right? I'm building like the underlying product that I'm trying to build, and then I'm treating this token as a product, and not confusing the two becomes an important thing. I feel like I'm being overly critical here because I feel like I get to push at you guys here to try to get the right answers. I think I'm very much aligned here.
You have companies like Dupe and Viva, which are large companies already that did the fair launch thing. They didn't need product market fit from the token. In fact, actually, the token was probably more of a distraction than anything. However, they have figured it out, and I don't know what Bobby's like vision overall for the token is 5 years in the future, but today he's in the trenches with us. He's on these things talking about this thing, and I love it for Bobby.
Is that a good thing, though? He talks about it as being very, very useful for kind of attention generation and acquisition. I don't know how many crypto Twitter people are buying furniture, but
yeah, exactly. Like I don't think we know from Bobby yet. Like, oh yeah, this is a runaway success. It's so obvious. It's a yes. And same thing with Viva. Again, like they just needed to distribute a token out to people so they could drive demand for it from their network of subscribers. So
as a devil's advocate, though, like Bobby has to say that. He can't just say, "Man, I've seen
this is a fucking mistake." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but no, I don't. I mean, I think Bobby's a pretty straight shooter.
He's committed follow-on capital to that token, though. In all fairness, so it's more than just I'm saying it. I've actually put my business behind it financially.
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of people fat finger launch a token and be like, "Yo, I'm out of here, man.
This is not fun, right?" He could have deleted the tweets and said, "Yeah, my bad, guys. Sorry, Ben."
No,
The other
exactly.
thing is too, though, that Bobby already had a successful business before launching a token. And I would say that's the key that we've seen is, when you just kind of come up with an idea and then you try to build after the token kind of becomes this distraction and you're not able to really focus on the core business. And so I think that's why Bobby was able to make it work. He had a revenue generating business. He had resources. He had experience to lean on. And so he was able to kind of use what he's built so far to have a community to rally around all the metrics and all the growth that his business has been seeing.
And
so
that's
far.
why we're talking about ICM in 2025.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a big difference in the level of commitment that it takes to launch a token and see if people like this idea and raise venture capital. And I think we need to get closer to, I don't know if we need to get closer to the high level of intention when you're launching a token to commit to something, but I think it is one of the things that needs to get figured out because we just see so many, token pumps, it dumps, and then the founder's like, okay, well, I guess no one cares anymore. And I'm just
that's going to be the defining characteristic of the launch pads or models that work, is that they're going to be able to put out hero cases that convince people that being slightly more longer term minded in them is actually a EV++ thing to go do.
But they've gone through this process. Karma, pump, dump, sideways, and then now they've got this neobanking on chain narrative that they've doubled down and dog. There's other examples you've highlighted.
Well, no, but I think I think the 11 a.m. guys are right. It's but how do you do it in a beautiful way where it's like we don't want to move back? Like VC, ultimately we're doing this, or at least we say we're doing this whole token thing to move forward into a new financial revolution, move away from VC. And so how do you do that in a meaningful way without just turning it into VC on chain, right? It'd be contradicting if you just do the same thing that we've been doing historically.
Yeah, but I think VC on chain, if you mean like institutional capital dominating, like I'm not there with you, but I'm far more there with you and saying, I want to invest in VC backable companies that are just happening to do it on chain. Because I mean, the reality is, guys, we're going to go out and you're going to make 100 of these investments, and 1 or 2 or 3 of them maybe have a chance to go and be category defining massive businesses. And so the big question in my mind is how much, like, does that dynamic persist? Is that actually the way that early stage investing works, or does the fact that there is more liquidity and that you have liquidity earlier and there's these other revenue models that come out change the game? And my guess is it's probably both in some way. And I think the job that we all have right now is we're trying to figure out how to allocate capital, whether that's $10 or $10 million, is making a bet on how that dynamic is going to play out. And so for me, this entire category is fascinating because we're seeing the breadcrumbs of what that future is going to look like being breadcrumbs on it.
And I think
we're not walking, people aren't walking ahead. It's being generative in front of us as we sort of move forward.
I think that's the beautiful thing. And I know we have to jump here in a sec, but I think that's the beautiful thing about this this narrative, meta, niche, whatever you'd like to label it as. All of us are asking those kinds of questions that you're asking, right? All of us are asking, okay, is it a hybrid form? Is it just token holder rights? Like, how does this thing work, and where can we meet in the middle? And I think traders, speculators, builders, everyone is focused on finding this kind of answer. And you compare that, what we have here in ICM versus anything anywhere else. Everyone's scatterbrained and kind of doing their own thing, PvPing each other, and those activities are just net negative. So I think what we're doing here is really beautiful. It's really important. We're pushing in the right direction, and we there's the phrase, started from the bottom, now we're here. We started from a non-devs rugging each other, NFT, we've come from that rug scammy background to now we're attracting billion-dollar companies. We're attracting real Web2 founders that have had successful exits and a great background. So we're headed in the right direction. We just got to see where this all leads. But
little
excited
Drake
for
reference just for us Canadians here. Appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Started from the bottom, and we're still mostly there, but we're going somewhere.
Yeah, still deciding.
All right, guys, I know you have a show coming up right now. Give us a little tease and then give it a pitch. Get people over to come watch your stream.
Well, look at that. We get the plug. Yeah. So we got, we talked about MetaDAO quite a bit here, but we got Profit on from MetaDAO with 2 of their most recent raises. We got Umbra coming on first, and then we got Avicii after. And, you know, these are the questions we're going to be answering. Our show, again, is here to not be the bearer of news, what's right, what's wrong. It's to simply get you all the information. You guys can make that decision, right? So we're going to see what's up with Avicii. We're going to see what's up with Umbra. Let them do the interview and pitch, hear about tokenomics, structure, what they're building. And we got that coming up shortly. So we appreciate you guys giving us the spotlight and the time here, though. We love what you're doing. And it's been an incredible.
Yeah, and MCG was born out of necessity to find opportunities, and your show was inspiration for us in some parts of our development. So I just want to thank you guys for giving us this platform, and we'd love to have you guys on MCG sometime soon.
Hell yeah.
Marvel Universe expands. It's at MicroCapGemShow on X, at MicroCapGemShow. Guys, thanks for jumping into the conversation. And yeah, we'll definitely love to come on your show and continue it. I think this is going to be the narrative that captures the most attention over the next couple of months, and hopefully longer. I think longer than that. I think Kyle Samani's tweet, which is like the 2 trends that are going to define the next 10 years, are AI and internet capital markets, and I think he's probably right. All right, guys, we'll let you go. Thanks for hanging out with us today. That's at MicroCapGemShow. Go catch their stream live here in 3 minutes. Right to the end.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the time.
See ya.
Cheers.